Hello, and on behalf of Cengage, I would like to welcome you to today's session, Strategies for Virtual Learning. We'll be focusing on strategies to help you with the transition of your course to online. But if you had joined our call earlier today, we were unfortunately hacked and we're all very upset about this. We just wanted to extend our sincere apologies to all of our customers who were on that call. We've decided to go ahead with the webinar as a recording only, which we'll send to you. So I'm going to start the session afresh. So my name is Stephanie Calverley, and I'm one of the marketing managers here at Cengage. I'd like to just quickly introduce you to some of the Cengage team. We've got our marketing manager, Anna Redding, on the line, and she'll be managing, well, she was managing the chat room and managing the questions. And I'd also like to introduce you to Stuart Webster, our Digital Solutions Manager, and Stuart will be able to help answer some technical questions that came through. So before we go too much further, I'd also like to explain that we've pulled together today's session as quickly as we could, and we're incredibly grateful to Chris Barlow, our guest speaker, for jumping on board.
Everyone.
Hi Chris, you jumped on board at very short notice only a week ago. So the format is going to be very informal, which might not be quite what you were expecting, but we hope you'll find the discussion interesting. So we've had many questions submitted already and we're aiming to cover most of those. But I wanted to mention up front that we won't be able to cover in enough detail the technical strategies that I know some of you are looking for in terms of how to create live lecture sessions with breakout rooms and polls. We won't be able to demo and teach those things in this session, but please be assured that we'll be sending additional resources that do provide that kind of detailed how-to information. So in these extremely unique circumstances, our goal is to provide you with some help as you work to get your courses online. And in fact, Cengage's response to the health crisis has been to open up free access to all of our digital courseware. So please do reach out to your local Cengage sales team if you're looking for any help and digital resources. You can see our URL on the screen there. So please do get in touch and we'll try to set you up as quickly as possible with whatever you need. So let's get into today's session. We felt that it would be great to have a conversation with a lecturer who has a lot of experience of incorporating virtual and digital learning techniques into teaching. And we're absolutely delighted that Chris Barlow from the University of Liverpool has joined us for the call. We've known Chris for a while because he's been using some of our products for a few years, and some of his students take part in our student ambassador scheme and our research. So with no further ado, I have the privilege of introducing our guest speaker, Chris. Hi, Chris. Hi. So thank you so much for joining us.
No, you're welcome. I'm very excited about it all.
Good. So could you start by telling us a little bit about the course you teach, your role, and how the University of Liverpool has responded to the COVID-19 crisis?
Yeah, that'd be a great point to start. So I currently work at the University of Liverpool within their management school. I'm just a lecturer on the accounting and finance program, where I've been for just over 4 years now. Prior to that, I was teaching the professional exams, the ACA, ACCA, CIMA, and I was doing that for around about 12 years before I decided to change things up and move into the world of higher education. The longer I've been within higher education, the more involved that I've got. So now I also have a role in the management school as the Director of Employability and Placement, so overseeing the student journey from when they join us in year one, right the way to when they leave us in the final year looking for a graduate job, and then in between that looking for that sandwich year, that year in industry placement as well. In terms of what I teach and what I deliver, I've got quite a varied role in my teaching. I suppose the one that we'll focus on for today is looking at my first year, second semester module on the accounting and finance program, where we look at an introduction to business. It's a nice, straightforward, simple introduction to business, where we use one of your products, the core text being Business by Pride, Hughes and Kapoor. And what we do is we introduce the students to the different forms of business ownership, management, organizational structure, marketing, HR, finance, and also throw in as well just a little bit of entrepreneurship, just to give the students a bit of an idea that it's not just about securing a graduate role. There are other opportunities out there for them. From a Liverpool University perspective, been quite proud really about how quickly and how well they've reacted to the pandemic. They've really put a focus on looking after the students and making sure that they are okay, not just from an academic perspective, but also from a personal perspective, because obviously there's been some massive changes that have happened within the recent weeks. But we as academics received an announcement, I think it was on the 14th of March, which I think was over one weekend, where we were asked, or we were told, that everything was moving online. There was no longer any face-to-face delivery. We were pretty well prepared for that because we'd already been instructed to start moving things online in the weeks before, purely because there had been a noticeable drop in attendance. Nothing to do with the quality of the teaching I had. The teaching quality was top-notch as always on our accounting and finance program, and students were just making their own plans. They were deciding either to head home where they felt safer. They weren't coming out of their student residences. They felt safer in there than venturing out. So that drop in attendance meant that students needed to catch up elsewhere. So we started to move things online with regards to putting more information, more accessible materials on our VLE.
Okay. Thanks. So, Chris, we were really keen to involve you in this webinar because you're an advocate of using technology and creating interactive sessions in your teaching. So can you tell us how you would typically deliver your course before this crisis and why you choose to do that?
Yeah, well, I suppose the focus for us at the moment is looking at this first year module that I deliver, whereby we'd use the flipped classroom. And I've used it further now on my year in industry role to bring it into other modules, because I think students really benefit from it as a form of online learning. You know, if you think about when they do go off to work in industry and when they graduate and secure that graduate role, a lot of their learning is then online. So if we can get them used to this online learning environment, it sets them up better for when they actually leave us at some point in the future. And I found that one of the key aspects to ensuring that this flipped classroom works is to make sure that we use technology. We have something that can, if you like, build a bridge between myself as the lecturer and the student. So one of the online resources that I've used is your MindTap product, which is really good because it allows me to track students' progress. I can see what student activities have been set by myself and what the engagement level is. And if there isn't engagement, or if students are finding particular areas challenging, I can chase them up. I can find out if they've got any issues, why they're not keeping up with the work, what could we do to go through and address those problems. So it really does help you maintain and build those links between yourself and those virtual students. Just a little bit about the delivery method that we used on this flipped classroom. The lectures were all pre-recorded, so that asynchronous method of delivery. So I uploaded onto the VLE a series of videos for each week, again, roughly between 10 or 15 minutes long. And I know a lot of people are interested about how long we should make the sessions, and I'll talk more about that a little bit later. Okay. But again, just bits and pieces that I did to try and make it interactive for the students. If you have a look on the screen that you've got there, I've actually got a different jumper and a different tie on each week. I know that sounds ridiculous. It is. But at least it gives the students that little bit of a different perspective each week to say, hang on, Chris is wearing something different, so we've got a different topic to look at this week. You know, my academic colleagues thought I was crazy. Maybe they're right, I don't know. But, you know, when I was recording them 2 summers ago, I had a load of jumpers in my office all hung up with different ties. It was 2018, and the summer of 2018, for those of you in the UK, will know that it was one of the hottest on record. And they were like, Chris, why have you got your jumpers? Why have you got your ties? And I was explaining to them what I was doing with regards to the online lectures. But it worked, and the students did actually pass comments on the course evaluation forms about the different colours of my jumpers. They were observant, which was good to see. In terms of the classroom activities, that then gets them more engaged and builds up that rapport with students away from the online activities, is we got them to do presentations in groups, so recapping their thoughts and their ideas from what they've covered on the online lectures. We also got them to, within their groups, research a company. So they got to choose their own company. So we've had students that have chosen IKEA, Adidas, Nike, John Lewis partnership, which is based in the UK, Amazon. They've chosen a variety of businesses, and then they had to follow that throughout the workshops. So linking back that company or business specifically back to its management structure, back to its form of ownership, looking at the source of finance that they've gone through there and used. And the students found out some really interesting stuff. I found out some really interesting stuff as well. And it also draws to your attention the fact that students really do like to use Wikipedia, and that is not a valid reference source. So just pointing that out to them, even identifying where there are mistakes on Wikipedia, them telling me that John Lewis Partnership was a company when it isn't. It is a partnership. I even was doubting myself as my knowledge about that business, but thankfully when I further researched it, I was correct. On Wikipedia wasn't. And then what we also did as well, if we just ran online quizzes with Kahoot, which I think a lot of people have used, but that really did get the students engaged and competitive as well within their group, trying to beat each other on a weekly basis and score the most points.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and because we've done some research with you and your students, we know that there are many benefits with using the flipped learning approach. And I think what we found was that it could really help first year students early on in their degree program to improve their independent learning skills.
Yeah, I think you're right, Stephanie. And I always preach to them about becoming self-managed independent learners. So they start taking responsibility early for their learning. And that we're getting away from the world of spoon feeding them information, which maybe they've had when they've been looking previously at their studies.
So because of the COVID-19 situation, it'd be good to know, given how you were teaching with the flipped learning method, how do you now deliver your course, and what has your experience been? How have you transitioned to a fully online environment?
I suppose I was relatively lucky in one capacity, that all the actual lecture materials were already online, so there wasn't too much of an impact in that respect. I suppose the biggest impact for me was around those workshops, and that we were no longer able to run them physically. They were the really good fun part of the module that I enjoyed, the students enjoyed. We built up a really good rapport. So I had to think about how we could then carry that on from either a synchronous method of delivery or asynchronous. And I did think about the possibility of running it live with those smaller groups, but there's quite a few things that you do need to go through and consider when you're making that decision about whether or not it's a synchronous or asynchronous delivery. So I think the first one is looking at time zones. So we've got a lot of students from the Middle East at Liverpool. We've also got a lot of students from China and the Far East. And all of a sudden you add in a 3 to 8 hour time difference to when you're delivering that lecture. So it might be great for me to do it at 3 or 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, but all of a sudden that's early evening in the Middle East and the middle of the night if you're looking there at the Far East. So you've got to really be careful with regards to getting the timing right. Other things to consider as well is the subject. Does it lend itself well to being a live session? Does it lend itself better to being recorded? Scientific subjects where you've got the physical testing, engineering that's going on as well, medicine as examples, it's very difficult then to transition that to online. Doesn't mean to say that you can't cover the technical content, but you do really need to think about how you then think about the experimentation and the testing. But I suppose for a business subject like accounting and finance, that's relatively straightforward to move online. I think the majority of things that you do can be taken online. Going back to the live, the recorded dilemma, you really have got to think about the students and what's beneficial to them. They've had a massive transition from where they've been sat in their room at university. They're now back at home. Some of them might have families to look after, whether that's young kids, whether that's older children, whether that's older members of the family. They might be having to tidy the house now. They've probably never tidied the students' accommodation for weeks and months. Now they're having to help out at home. That their daily routine is probably different to ours. I'm up at 6 o'clock every morning helping with the kids and sorting them out. Students don't even know that there's 2 6 o'clocks in one day. So all of a sudden, if we're doing a 9 o'clock live lecture, your participation is likely to be less already because the students possibly still in bed. Okay, I think they would prefer it whilst they're at home to be later in the evening. So what I decided to do is, although it might not work perfectly in terms of what I'm trying to achieve, I went with the asynchronous method of delivery for my workshops. Okay, but I still tried to keep the same theme of what we'd already done. So to assist the students with that, I'll just give you an example of 2 handouts that I put up on the VLE for my students to understand what they're doing, where they're headed, so they can better plan their time. So if you look at what you've got on the left-hand side of your screen there, that is what I give them for the pre-recorded lectures. I list out the learning objectives, I list out the video, and I list out the time that video takes, so that students can sit there and think, you know what, I've got half an hour free here. I'm going to start this week's lectures. I'm going to look at the first video for about 15 minutes, and then I'm going to do the activities, and then I'm going to take a break. Okay. I think there's a technique that somebody mentioned to me recently called the Pomodoro technique of studying, whereby you break your day into 25-minute sections. So you study for 25 minutes and do a task. You then take a 10-minute break. You repeat that for 4 times, and then you take a 1-hour break. Okay. So the structure of the 10 to 15-minute videos fits in quite well. On the right-hand side, it goes through there and gives you the information with regards to what I've done on the workshops, which I've recorded now. So again, I've got some podcasts on there. I've got some activities. I give them specific instructions within the podcast and on the handout about what to do. And I also go through as well and give them some idea about how long that is going to take them overall with regards to listening to the podcast and then taking part within the activity as well. So it just gives them a little bit of structure to the module, whereby maybe they've lacked that structure in their day-to-day academic studies.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that information. That's really helpful, because we had so many people when they were signing up for the webinar, they were asking questions about, you know, they were worried about inclusion because many students might not have reliable internet access and things like that. So it's really the same issue to consider whether you can do synchronous or asynchronous. What's the best option, similar to what you're saying about the time zones?
Yeah, and you know, it's just whatever suits you and your students. I don't think there's any best option. The ideal option at the moment would be that we'd all be back at university and carrying on as normal. We obviously know we can't do that, but whatever works with you and works with your students, you've got to get that happy medium.
Yeah, absolutely. And we also had lots of questions about how do you structure and organise your work, which I think, you know, is really great to see how you do it there. In particular, the length of the sessions are quite short. We'll touch
upon that again a little bit later on as well, because you really do have to reimagine your teaching. You can't just take what you've done in the classroom and move it straight over to an online environment. You've really got to think about it bit by bit.
Yeah, okay, great. So can I ask, you know, given that you've got quite a lot of experience with virtual learning techniques, were there any surprises or challenges that were, you know, surprising to you that came about because of this crisis?
I think the biggest surprise is it's been like a space rocket. It's been ridiculously quick. How everybody has quickly transitioned from the physical environment into the online environment, I think, is a testament to all the academic institutions, a testament to all the academics themselves, the support staff, the learning technologists, the students as well have adapted to that change very, very, very quickly. You know, we're not talking about, you know, months here. We're talking about days and weeks in terms of how we've moved so quickly. I think also as well, the surprise how successful it's been with the time that people have given to moving things online. You know, when I originally did my flipped classroom, the process that I went through in terms of reimagining how I was going to do my teaching, how that would fit in with the online world, how I'd then create additional activities, and what everyone's done so far, I think, has been truly astounding. And I think it's really positive when you get some of the feedback like we've had at Liverpool from the students about how well they have received it so far and what we've done. So it is really rewarding. Again, I think everybody will think, well, I could do it better, but that's bound to be the case. We can always make improvements. It doesn't matter how long you've been doing the online delivery for. you're always looking to try and make improvements. With regards to the challenges, I think they're what are effectively on the horizon. I think a lot of universities are dealing with these at the moment. And the challenge is moving the assessment method from a physical, if you like, exam method into an online environment. I think what's really interesting here is that the different approaches that I've noticed that are in the UK, there is no one set approach across all of the HE institutions. And we've got a wide range from whereby some institutions have turned around and said, well, we don't need to assess you any further, so there's no assessments. Some institutions have turned around and said, well, there's no assessments for first years, but there will be assessments for final years. Where there are assessments, those assessments have needed to be changed. So there's still some form of exam. It's an online exam. Students are going to have maybe 24 or 48 hours to go through and submit that. That brings around issues around about cheating and how people can access the information. But that, again, is going to be one of the challenges that we've got. And I think there's one institution that's pretty much kept it business as usual with regards to the same exam in the same time, same dates, also the same length of the exam, so no 24 or 48 hours. And I think that could cause some challenges there with regards, again, to the time zone. So I think the assessment is the biggest challenge that people face. And if you're interested in looking at different forms of assessment, I would go through and just look at a lot of different HE institutions, because a lot of their assessment is communicated to the students online, and you can find that information there, and it's really useful.
Yeah. Thank you. There were a lot of questions from our attendees about exams, and we'll perhaps touch on that a bit later as well. Thank you. So I'd like to ask on behalf of the many lecturers who signed up for this webinar, who are transitioning their course to online for the very first time. They've submitted many questions around the subject of engagement. So what are your top strategies for transitioning for the first time to fully online, and also your top strategies for keeping students engaged in an online environment?
I think my first thing would be have no fear, okay? Don't be afraid. We're not perfect as individuals. The technology itself isn't perfect, and things will and have gone wrong, okay? So I think the key bit to do is to just try and stay calm and practice. There will be issues. There'll be issues that arise beforehand, which is great because you can then deal with it. They will arise as these things happen, which we've seen. But the main thing there is to keep calm and to practice. You know, Stephanie, you know, in the days running up to this, we've probably met about 3 or 4 times at least. We've practiced using the technology, but sometimes things happen that are beyond your control. But the key thing is about how you deal with that, and then how you can adapt it and learn from it. And again, I think I've mentioned already, the students are very accommodating from what I've seen. They appreciate the additional pressure that academics are under. They can see the extra lengths that would go into to try and help them, and they are very, very appreciative of that. It's sort of got to a point with all the online stuff now that I feel as if I've got more contact with my students maybe than what I've had previously, because we're setting up a lot more online meetings to check on their health, to check on their well-being, to find out how they're adapting. So, you know, it's brought about some other benefits than what we'd have alternatively have thought about. Yeah. Other tips that I can give, you know, we are all going to be anxious, no matter whether you're very experienced, inexperienced about using online technology. We are all going to start off anxious, but it's key that we can then ease that anxiety. So what I would recommend, first of all, is reimagine your class time. You can't just pick up your folder, your file, take it from the classroom and move it online. Ideally, we'd like a lot more time to go through and reimagine your class time, but these are just little bits and pieces that I would think about to try and add in. First of all, don't be afraid to ask questions of your students. You're all looking at me thinking, Chris, what are you on about? Why are you so daft? You're not going to get a response. I know I'm not going to get a response, but all of a sudden, if somebody asks you a question, okay, so how many points clear were Liverpool at the top of the English Premier League before the season came to a halt? that gets people thinking. Everybody's thinking now, oh, how many was it? Was it 17, 18, 19, 20, 25? There we go. So it's got people thinking already. I'm not going to get a response, but at least I can give you an answer. I think off the top of my head, it was 25. I could be wrong. But what we've got to go through and do that, ask questions, give answers to those questions, again, to get students' attention, tell them the wrong, even though they might be right, because then they start questioning you. If you've got a numerical question and you're giving them an answer, give them the wrong answer, and then say, no, don't worry, I'm only messing. This is the right answer. Because again, it just switches them on automatically because they've got into that, oh yeah, I'm just listening to you, I've got that right answer, it's dead easy. Hang on a minute, no, I've got the answer. How can that be? So do question the students, come up with answers and try and engage them in that way. Other options are to go through there and try and engage the students through online options. I've used discussion boards, so I pose a question and get students to answer that question. I get them to upload information on wikis, so that's what we use with the company research. We get them to upload their company research findings. I add comments and I encourage other students to go through there and add comments as well, and it builds up that online environment. And again, I think, as we mentioned before, one of the key things is about the time and the length of your videos or your live sessions. Elephants have short memories. So do students. So do we. Okay. So think about it as your lesson as a pizza. Okay. You can't eat that 2 or 3 hour pizza in one go. It's not going to go down very well. You need to break it down into slices. How many slices are there in a pizza? Is it 4? Is it quarters? 8, 10, 12? Depends how big the pizza is. Depends how hungry you are. So it depends upon what suits you and what suits your module. Don't eat the pizza in one go. Don't go with 2 or 3 hours. It just doesn't work. Break it down into smaller, manageable chunks. Yeah, make sure that you encourage people to take a break. I actually go through at the end of each lecture and say, right, what you need to do now is you need to go through and you need to answer the questions on Cengage's MindTap product, then come back, but only come back and start the next video once you've gone through there and taken a break and had yourself a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, or grab yourself one of your 5 a day. And if you can do that, the students begin to listen, they get to understand how it all works, and they slowly but surely begin to engage and get happy with it. They're happy, you're happy as well. Okay.
I'm sure that many of our customers will be really interested to hear your experience, because we've had so many questions from people saying, how do I move my typical 3-hour face-to-face lecture to online? And you know, they're considering doing this live 3-hour lecture.
Yeah, even if it's a live session, take breaks within that live session.
Yeah.
Now, the break could be for you by getting them to do a question and then debriefing that question afterwards. Again, we're moving towards the revision phase on exams. So again, another tip that I'd have is that if you are debriefing a question, if it takes 20, 25, 30 minutes to debrief that question, that's fine. Okay, you know, that's longer than the 10 or 15 minutes, but that suits that particular type of program, that module and that question. My one tip would be, though, is that if the question has got parts A, B, and C, don't record parts A, B, and C all together. Record each part separately, and maybe even when you upload it onto your VLE, maybe put the answer to part C first, because that's usually where we put some of the easier bits and pieces or some of the narrative aspects that students can get first. So put that up first, then do part A, then do part B.
Okay. Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you. And do you have any favourite tools or technical tips that you could recommend?
Equipment, oh geez, there's just so much out there. Okay, you know, in terms of technical equipment, a headset is a possibility. You'll need some form of webcam as well. I think it's always beneficial, if you can, to put an image of yourself when you're doing a synchronous or asynchronous session. It helps the students with the communication. You know, we've always got the verbal communication, but what about the non-verbal, the use of hands, facial expressions? You know, that all helps. So if you've got a webcam, that's going to go through and help as well. I haven't got my headphones on at the moment. The reason why is because my camera that I've got has got a built-in microphone and speaker. If you're curious about what I use, I have got a separate set of headphones. So if I'm ever in a cafe having a cup of tea or coffee, I can whack the headphones on and get involved there. So that's a Plantronics 400, which somewhere between 20 and 30 pounds. I think that's actually foldable as well, so goes into my bag. And then my camera that I've got is a Logitech C920. It's about 4 years old now, but you can still get them online. They're about 70, 80 pounds, but you can get more up-to-date ones, which are there probably around 90 to 100 pounds. Other things as well, just check your Wi-Fi's working, find the best place in the house where it works. Unfortunately, I changed my service provider just before everything happened. So usually I would be in the attic delivering my sessions. I'm in my bedroom. I'm actually currently sat on my bed because that's where I get the best Wi-Fi signal at the moment. I could go downstairs where there's even better Wi-Fi signal, but I'd be getting jumped on by a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. And that wouldn't be really very good.
We love that you're keeping it real for us, though. This is the situation.
You've got to. My door's locked at the moment and pretty much barricaded up. I've instructed them as well not to use the Wi-Fi until this is all finished. So yeah, just little things that you need to consider. If you're in a different or an odd place, don't be embarrassed. Don't be ashamed about it. Don't worry. People are just grateful for what you're doing for them. And then the other one at the end there, just check your battery. Make sure that your battery is on your laptop, that it's fully charged. If it's plugged in, I know it sounds daft, make sure it's turned on at the wall. There's nothing worse than your laptop failing or the technical equipment failing at some point partway through. In terms of the online technology, I am a big fan of Microsoft and Office 365. If you've got an Office 365 subscription, you're in good hands. You've got your PowerPoint to go through there and use. You can record your PowerPoint very easily. There's a button there just to click on and press record, and then you can upload that straight to your VLE if you so wish. You've got Teams as well, which is a great platform to help you run synchronous sessions as well. You can send out a team meeting. People can come along and join. Again, you can use your webcam to go through there and show you or show your students how to do things. There's also an app which is there called the Whiteboard app. So again, you can use that like a whiteboard like you have back at your university. And then you've also got OneNote as well, which I think is a really useful term in terms of collaboration between students and with yourself as well. So if you're supervising dissertations, it's obviously going to be quite difficult to supervise dissertations remotely at this point in time. So you can share files on OneNote, you can annotate the files on OneNote, and you can give some really good detailed feedback that maybe you'd have been able to do previously face-to-face. So the suite of Microsoft products, I think, really, really goes through and helps. If you're not that familiar or not confident, go online, the Microsoft Education handle on Twitter, at Microsoft Edu. There's loads of people who are there who are prepared to help you. Ask away, and people will go out of the way to do the utmost for you. Other options, which if you like free options, obviously you need an Office 365 subscription. Zoom is a free tool. Obviously you need to be careful there in terms of security issues, but when we've used it previously, it's been really good. Again, you just need to be careful though in terms of capacity. You've got a limited amount of capacity for 40 minutes. If you want to deliver it to larger cohorts of students, then maybe you could use Teams, okay? Alternatively, you can pay for the Zoom subscription, which allow you to deliver it to more people. There's other online options as well. I think On24 is very, very similar to Zoom. You've also got Adobe Connect. I think both of those, however, require some form of payment. We use Adobe Connect at Liverpool quite a lot to deliver some of our online seminars and tutorials, and that goes down really, really well with students. And then if you want to edit some of your recordings that you might make, then you've also got Camtasia as well. Again, that is a paid-for service, but it's well worth the subscription. If you don't want to pay or haven't got the money, there's plenty of free software out there. Even Microsoft itself has its own editing tool there as well. Okay. Again, practice with them. I think the problem that you've got is like what students have. There's so much information out there. where do you look? Where do you start? And likewise as well, if you think about streaming online content, what's the best one? You know, you've got Google Play and movies, you've got Netflix, you've got YouTube, you've got Amazon, you've got Disney Plus. Which is the best one that suits you? Find something that suits you and then continue to use. So at the moment, for us, it's Disney Plus. Okay, yeah, the kids are there watching endless amounts of Toy Story, and you name it, all the old Disney classics as well.
Yeah, it's Netflix in our house. Stuart, can I ask, is there anything else, as our digital solutions manager? Obviously Cengage has a heap of products, but I mean, aside from our products, it's just to help lecturers with their recording, and any free tools that you know of that you would also recommend?
I mean, I think certainly to start with, I think everything that Chris has talked about are tools that we use at Cengage. So Office 365, we're subscribers for our business. So those kind of tools really suit well. And I think PowerPoint is the one that people most commonly underestimate, in the sense that you can record audio and video on top of your slides and share those with your students. So if you're looking for a very simple solution where you're pre-recording, then PowerPoint can do that really well. So I think certainly it's a tool that many people have, so it's one that I wouldn't underestimate. But I mean, in addition to that, things like Screencast-O-Matic, which are another screencasting piece of software that allow you to record. That's a free one, so that's a consideration. Camtasia that Chris talked about, that's a subscription product, but is really great if you want to be able to edit and take a little bit more control over what that final product looks like. So they're really good. And then some of the other stuff that Chris has talked about, so things like Kahoot, for being able to do live polling, works really well. It's a great tool and quite commonly used. I think there's a subscription model for that for larger groups as well.
Yeah, I think that's recently changed, hasn't it, Stuart?
Yeah, they just put it in. I think they're trying to monetize the product, which may make it less popular with some people, but it is a great tool. It's super simple for users to get on board with. And I think sometimes that ease of use is something that people are looking for. So I'm a big fan of Kahoot. There's another one called Poll Everywhere, which again, it's another polling tool that you can use. And things like Kahoot and Poll Everywhere, if you're learning to use them and becoming familiar with them as a distance learning model, you can still use them when you go back into the lecture hall. So you've kind of got that value add that you can take them back with you. So I think there's a whole raft of tools. I think the other thing to think about is just, as Chris said, it's about being comfortable in where you're recording or where you're presenting from. So finding the best place for Wi-Fi, also finding somewhere you're comfortable. You see, you guys are really well lit today, so your students would be able to see you. And that's a big pickup we find is visuals. And if you're going to have a video camera on, that people can see you clearly. And audio is a really big thing, that if the audio is not coming through clearly and crisply, students become easily distracted and will drift off. So I think thinking about that, so whether it's a case of having the microphone that's built into your device, or whether it's using a webcam that's also got built-in audio features, or like me, you can kind of see the edge of my, now I do a lot of this, and having something much bigger, it really depends on what suits you best and what you're most comfortable with. But I think ease of use, comfort, lighting for the video side of things are all things worth thinking about. And once you've found that setup, trying to find somewhere that you can use on a regular basis, not necessarily always having to lock the children out of the bedroom.
Thanks so much, Stuart. That's really helpful. So Chris, I've got a final question from me, and then we'll move on to some of the questions that some of our participants submitted when they registered. How do you think this situation is going to impact education in the future?
I think it's going to impact it massively. We've got an opportunity here. It's a bit of a freebie, a bit of a try before you buy, whereby academics have got this opportunity to practice using the technology without massive amounts of pressure from the students or the institution. You know, the institution, the students want something there, but it doesn't have to be polished. We can polish it later on once we come back in September, October, hopefully back into the physical environment as well as the online environment. But we've got a really good opportunity here to get used to those online tools, to learn from them, to think about how we can apply them in our teaching and in the students' learning going forward. Because I think the students are going to maybe clamour for a little bit more online learning going forward. Yes, we all love the physical contact. We all love being in a room with the students to get feedback from them, to find out how they're doing. But now that they're going to have that flexibility, as technology moves forward, as we're in this fast-moving consumer world, that may change when we all get back to normal. We don't know. But everybody wants flexibility. And I think with online learning, online teaching, that gives everybody that flexibility. So I think there'll be more demand from it, and we'll have better experience from what we've encountered in the past few weeks and months going forward.
Thank you. That's really interesting. And we've got we had some good questions that came in. One was, do you find it interesting that people are rushing to use new platforms to deliver new ways of working that they could have been doing through their existing VLE all along?
Yeah, it is. I think there's always a barrier, a resistance to change, isn't there? Now that barrier and that resistance is being taken down because we're effectively being forced into it. We have no other choice. If I go back to when I first started teaching, back in, I think it was about 2004 or something along, 2008, apologies. 2008 is when I went through and started. I've got myself here. Let me see. 2004. It was 2004. So yeah, back in 2004 when I first started teaching, I used a projector, the old-fashioned acetate and pen, and was scribbling away on there. When the online whiteboard or digital whiteboard came along, everyone was up in arms, like, no, you can't take my projector away from me. That's what I live and breathe. That's my day. You can't change it. And there was massive resistance to change. And then as people began to realize the benefits of using the online whiteboard and how much better everything looked and how it improved the student's experience, people began to take it on board, were happy with it. So, I think now that there's going to be less resistance to that change, and people will ultimately get more comfortable using the technology.
That's a great answer. And another question was more about, is the proliferation of software packages and the inability to keep things in one place making life more difficult than needs be? Is there a one-stop shop? I think you might have already covered this, but if you had to recommend one, what would it be?
Yeah, I think the one-stop shop is Office 365. But again, it is difficult to try and keep everything in one place. There will be a tool that you might want to use on top of everything that Office 365 has. So like we mentioned, the online quizzes and the polling software. But I think what we've got to remember as well is that this is also getting the students ready for the real world. And when you're out there in business, not everything is in one place. And you need to be able to pull the pieces of the jigsaw together. So we're actually doing the students a little bit of a favour by not having everything in one place. Yeah, it makes it a bit more of a challenge. It might take things a little bit longer to do. In the online world, we want everything just like that. Now, if it takes more than 1 second to upload a web page, you get frustrated with your computer and want to throw it out the window. But, people need to learn where to find things and how to manage things. So, yeah, unfortunately, there isn't an exact one-stop shop. Myself, I prefer Office 365. But again, courses for courses and what suits you, and more importantly, your students best.
Yeah, thank you. And if I can just see if Anna is still there. Anna, because you were looking at the questions that people submitted when they registered. Are there any questions that you'd like to put to Chris on behalf of our audience?
Yeah, so we've just got a few final questions that I picked out. So we've had a lot of questions about what are the best tools to replace exams. So how best to do online exams and assessments, especially about maintaining integrity to ensure students aren't cheating. So Chris, do you have anything that the University of Liverpool are doing, or anything you can suggest to help people?
I think this is the biggest challenge, I suppose. I did mention about the challenge of moving the physical exam into the online environment. And this is very, very difficult to do, particularly because you've got students all around the world in different time zones. When are you going to get the students to sit the exam? I think we just have to accept that that there is a risk that students will take that opportunity. I don't think you can get away from that fact. So what you can do is maybe we've got Turn It In, which is a tool through Grademark on our VLE. We're looking to get the students to submit their work through that so that we can go through and ensure that there isn't similarity between what people have written. Also as well to help the students a bit by giving them word limits on particular questions, because if you've got 24 hours to write a written exam, you could be writing it forever and ever. So but if you apply a word limit, that's going to go through there and focus the retention. But I do think we just need to accept that there is that risk that is there. In an ideal world, we put everything online and you'd answer the questions online, maybe through some form of multiple choice exam. So if you can do that, that would work pretty well. But again, you've got to check the way that you're testing them through that online quiz is robust enough to handle the number of students attempting that quiz or that exam at the same time. The University of Liverpool, they've taken a blanket approach across all years. The exams are going to be delivered online, so the students will be able to download that exam. They'll then be able to have 24 hours to go through there and submit it. And we're putting in place plagiarism check to ensure that there isn't massive opportunities for the students to go through there and cheat.
Thank you. So someone else has asked, I have the feeling that some of my students have disengaged completely. Any strategies for reaching out to those students to re-engage them?
Yeah, I think what we might find is students will become a little bit more engaged as we get closer to the exams. So that tends to happen anyway. Let's not forget what can happen normally. Our students would have done exams in January. They came straight back in February. They've been studying straight away. They're probably very tired. There's been massive upheavals. There's bound to be that lack of engagement to start off with, but I think that will pick up as we get closer to the exams. I think the important thing though is all around communication. If you communicate what your plan of action is, what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, how long it's going to take, what you expect of them to deliver and when it is going to be delivered. So maybe set out a timeline for the students about the remainder of the module leading up to the exam. So again, that the students can plan their time around what is being expected of them from you. And I think that will really, really help the students. And again, the feedback that we've had from our students in Liverpool, where we've taken that approach, is it's been really, really positive because it allows them to give a little bit of structure to their day as well.
Great. And so finally, just one last question. We've had a number of questions around wellbeing. So can you share how the University of Liverpool is supporting staff who may have different levels of confidence and skills with the transition to online? And also, how is the University of Liverpool supporting its students in this transition as well?
We are very supportive of students and of staff. We're really lucky from an academic side that we do have a lot of learning technologists who've been able to help us if we do have any issues. So quite easy, just email them and they'll get back to you pretty straight away. They'll phone you if necessary to help and support you. Again, because we made that transition early enough, they were able to ensure that everybody had the equipment that was necessary in order to help them put material online and to record. So we've been pretty lucky in that respect. Also as well, in terms of the students, we've got a really solid academic support system in place for our students. We piloted it 3 years ago, an academic advisor system, whereby we regularly meet up with the students in groups, not just individually, and run careers focused sessions, professional skill sessions as well. So we build a real bond and a link and an understanding of our students, and we've tried to maintain that as we go along. So we've set up Microsoft Teams accounts for our academic advisors. We've set up, or sorry, I should say academic advisees. We've organised regular meetings, fortnightly, weekly potentially. We've maintained communication with them over email. We've asked them to check in with us to let them know or let us know that they are okay where they are. There's still quite a few students who are on campus that weren't able to get home. So the university is putting in measures to help them. They're getting phone calls from members of staff on a daily basis to talk to them, to keep the spirits up, to find out how they're getting on. There's quite a lot of measures that the university is putting in place centrally and also from a management school perspective as well.
That's really good to hear.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I think we've actually run out of time and we've reached the end of today's session.
Too much as I normally do. That's why I try and keep things to 10 or 15 minutes, and it'll stop me blathering.
Chris, you've been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences, but also speaking so candidly with us. I think many of our customers and our listeners will really appreciate that. So thank you again, and thank you.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure. And I just hope that it's provided some insight for everybody, wherever it is that they are in the world. If you do have any questions, then by all means, let me know. Get in touch. Social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever it may be. Because we're here to help. We want to give you all the best possible experience, and ultimately your students as well. Remember, nothing's perfect. We've all got room for improvement. Try it and see how you get on.
Thank you so much, and thank you everyone who will be listening to the webinar. Thank you to everyone who signed up, and we'll be in touch with you all very soon. Thank you.